Beneath the shimmering marble floors, the intricate crystal lighting, and the gleaming glass display cases filled with cyano watches that sparkled like frozen fragments of time, something was rotting. It couldn't be seen with the naked eye, but it could be felt, like a cold draft slicing through even the thickest coat. The automatic doors hissed open, and a man stepped inside. His hoodie was worn, faded at the cuffs. His boots were caked with dust like he had just walked off a construction site, not into a boutique worth millions. Every head turned, as though his very presence disrupted the immaculate symmetry of the store. Then came the whisper, soft and quick like static across a broken speaker, but one sentence cut through the silence. "Give him the fake. The original's heading to Houston as usual." The man's step faltered. No one noticed his reaction. Because no one knew who he was. But they should have. Because this wasn't just any man. This was Miguel Santiago, the founder of Sano, the man whose hands, now lined with age and faint scars, had once molded every dial, polished every bezel by hand in a tiny workshop in El Paso, Texas. At 58, a quiet Latin American man with a spine forged in fire, Miguel didn't speak often, but when he did, truth rang through like steel striking steel. The marks of time still etched his fingers, a testament to the countless nights he'd spent hunched over a workbench, shaping metal, buffing glass, refusing shortcuts even when the world wasn't watching. Ciano wasn't born in luxury. It was built from dust, sweat, and weekends, sacrificed in silence. While others partied, Miguel slept on concrete floors beside a lathe because rent and ambition couldn't both be paid. The name Ciano wasn't just a brand, it was a tribute. Named after his mother's village in Bolivia, it stood for something deeper: roots, sacrifice, honor. Every Ciano watch was meant to tick not just with time, but with truth, heritage, and pride. And for a long while it did. The company grew. One watch became thousands. Hollywood started noticing. Athletes wore them as symbols of resilience and class. Awards came, and Miguel was celebrated as the man who turned a dream into gold. But success, as it often does, brought distance. Miguel took a step back and trusted others to carry the torch, believing the soul of Ciano would be safe in their hands, until the day he received an email. It was from a retired engineer, someone Miguel remembered well. Years ago, the man had written a heartfelt letter thanking him for a Ciano watch he'd worn on his daughter's wedding day. But this time, his words weren't warm. "They sold me a Zebrano. I had it appraised. It's fake. I believed in your name. I believed in you." Miguel read it once, then again and again. Each sentence hit like a hammer against the foundation he'd spent decades laying. It wasn't just a complaint. It was a fracture in the soul of everything he had built. He dove into reviews, scanned forums, scrutinized receipts. The signs had been there all along. Serial numbers didn't match. Materials were subpar. Customers confused. Store managers evasive. And always, there were whispers, a sickness spreading from within. So, Miguel made the hardest decision of his life. He removed the suit, set aside the title, and pulled on the same hoodie he'd worn in the early days, back when no one knew his name. No press release, no press at all, just one man walking into the house he built, not as a CEO but as the father of its soul, quietly asking if it still had one. Even before reaching the counter, he knew something was off. Soft jazz played from the ceiling speakers, but it couldn't mask the tension cutting through the boutique's curated calm. Near the exit, a young woman stood with her back to the glass wall, slim frame, an olive coat trembling slightly on her shoulders. In her arms, a white gift box, clutched to her chest like it held her father's legacy. Her voice cracked. I bought this for my dad's retirement. He only wore it twice, and the strap snapped. Her eyes glistened. She blinked fast, holding back emotion. I had it appraised. They said it's fake. Behind the counter, Tanya, mid-40s, hair in a tight ponytail, gold necklace resting with the weight of smugness, barely looked up. Her voice was robotic, sterile. If you bought it here, it's authentic. Maybe your father broke it. These things happen. The woman took a shaky breath. He's 72. He cried when I gave it to him. You think he'd break it on purpose? Miguel's chest tightened. His fists clenched at his sides. His feet suddenly felt glued to the cold marble beneath him. Then came another voice, slick, loud, grating. Victor. A young salesman with overgelled hair and the smirk of a man who mistook arrogance for charm. He leaned in, voice dripping with condescension. Mum, he drawled. If you can't afford a real Ciano, don't come in here blaming us. A knockoff you bought online isn't our fault. The woman's lips quivered. Are you serious? Victor raised a brow. Do I look like I'm joking? Tanya crossed her arms. No receipt, no warranty card? Then we're done here. Tears filled the young woman's eyes. She looked around at the store's polished perfection, at the other shoppers who pretended not to see. No one moved. She turned toward the door. But just before leaving, she whispered, not to them, but to herself, as if saying goodbye to something she once believed in. My dad trusted him, and now all I see is a crack in his dream. She paused one last time. My father saved for months. When I gave him that watch, he wore it like it was solid gold. The door chimed softly as it shut behind her. The room fell still. Miguel stood frozen, rage and heartbreak coiling inside him like smoke in a sealed box. His breath stuck in his chest. His hands, once shaped by years of honest labor, now trembled with something he hadn't felt in decades. Not shame, but fury, born from love, for the legacy now so carelessly betrayed. Miguel didn't build Ciano just to keep time. He built it to help people feel value, the value of honesty, of original beauty, of quiet pride in something real. But now, beneath the boutique's soft golden lighting and beneath its polished facade, customers weren't receiving excellence. They were being handed humiliation, dressed in designer perfume and passed off as customer service. This wasn't luxury, it was cruelty, wearing a suit and smiling. He walked slowly toward the counter, eyes still fixed on the door the young woman had just exited, almost like he was trying to hold on to something she had left behind. Each step was heavy, as if the weight of a collapsing past pressed against his chest. Victor, who didn't recognize the man standing before him, glanced up with indifference, as if addressing a lost tourist. Can I help you, sir? Miguel gave a slight nod. His voice, though calm, held the storm inside at bay. And looking for something special. He turned toward the display case. These were his designs, his legacy under glass. But he wasn't there to shop. He was there to see what they would try to sell him. Would the lie be dressed in gold, or would silence betray the rot underneath? More than anything, Miguel was measuring the depth of the betrayal. He leaned in slightly and tapped the glass. Slightly, but with the certainty of a man who once placed each screw into these watches by hand. I'd like to see the Arclight chrono. Victor hesitated, then let out a dismissive laugh, as if Miguel had just asked to test drive a Lamborghini while wearing work boots. The Arclight, he repeated, throwing a glance toward Tanya. We don't usually show that unless... You're serious? Miguel raised an eyebrow. I'm serious. Victor gave him a once-over. Faded hoodie, worn heels on his boots, calloused hands, a weathered face, softened by time yet marked with precision. No luxury watch on his wrist, no cologne, no briefcase, nothing that screamed serious buyer. Tanya approached, her high heels ticking like a judgmental clock across the marble floor. She squinted with a mocking smile, like she was enjoying some inside joke. "Heard that hoodie whispering earlier," she said with dry sarcasm. "Fine, let him see one of the display models. Let's show him what dreams taste like." Victor nodded and vanished into the back room. Miguel stood under the warm lighting, surrounded by glass and silence. Every passing second stretched like a memory. He could feel Tanya's gaze, less like a salesperson's attention and more like an assessment of his worth. From a corner of the boutique, whispers began, snickers, sideways glances. The whole place had turned into a theater where he was the unwitting performer. Victor returned, holding the watch with a false gentleness, as though he was handing a fragile heirloom to a child he didn't trust. Not respect, just fear of blame. Miguel took the watch into his palm. At first glance, it seemed correct. The arc light chrono, his proudest design. Silver hand-etched bezel, a dial black as obsidian, sapphire glass curved like the edge of a raindrop. But something was wrong. It was too light, off balance. The dial was navy, not black. The clasp clicked like tin. And worst of all, no serial number. Just a flat metal plate, stamped with a generic machine engraving. His chest tightened. "Does this one come with a certificate?" he asked quietly. Tanya crossed her arms, smirked. "Do you really need one? You haven't even told us how you plan to pay." Miguel began to respond, but Victor cut in with a wide grin. "You thinking of financing this over a few years?" His voice was louder now, clearly meant for the room. "Or just here to window shop before heading back to your shift?" A snort from the counter, a soft laugh near the espresso machine, a disdainful glance from the security guard by the door. Miguel stood still, silent, like a statue carved by years of struggle, but inside his heart cracked, piece by piece. He remembered designing the arc light by candlelight in a cramped room while his wife slept beside him. He remembered flying to Geneva with just a prototype and a suitcase full of hope. He remembered seeing that watch on the wrists of presidents, artists, and astronauts, and now he was being mocked. In his own store, by people who didn't even know what they were touching. Something inside him fractured, but he didn't lash out. His hands trembled, slightly, not from rage, but from restraint, because he wasn't done. Not yet. Miguel turned to leave, humiliation pressed against his chest like a stone. But then, he stopped. Just a few steps behind a tall column, two employees passed by, unaware of who stood nearby. They walked with the arrogance of those who think they'll never be held accountable. One of them, Darren, an inventory clerk, pulled out his phone and chuckled. "Denver got their batch last week," he whispered, voice like wind behind a closed door. "Houston gets theirs tomorrow. We just keep those replicas flowing, baby." The other, younger, eyes darting nervously, smirked and added, "You think anyone even notices? Everyone's chasing labels. Half of them don't even check the serial numbers." Miguel froze. Time didn't stop, but his breath did. That whisper from earlier, it hadn't been a misunderstanding. It wasn't background noise. It was a confession. And this wasn't just a few bad apples. This was organized, strategic, cruel. It wasn't just Denver, not just Houston. How many other cities were receiving the real Zavano masterpieces under the table, quietly funneled to private collectors or back-alley deals for inflated profits, while regular customers, like the girl with tears in her eyes, were handed fakes barely worth a tenth of what they paid. Miguel's knees weakened under the weight of his fury, because this wasn't just counterfeiting. This was the desecration of a legacy. Miguel's knees nearly buckled under the crushing weight of anger and heartbreak. He braced himself against the marble pillar beside him, feeling the chill of the stone seep into his palm like an anchor holding him steady against the storm rising in his chest. This wasn't just about counterfeit watches. This wasn't merely fraud. This was an assault on the very legacy he had spent a lifetime building. Each Vano wasn't just engineered, it was crafted. With hands taught by labor, with a family's honor embedded in each curve and screw. And now, that name, his name, was being stamped onto a lie. Miguel lifted his head, eyes misted with emotion but lit from within by a fire that had never gone out. There was no doubt left. It was time. Not for a press release, not for an email, but for the truth, delivered face to face. He turned and walked slowly back toward the counter. The fake arc light chrono still lay there like discarded debris, worthless to those who didn't understand what it should have meant. The store was quiet now. Tanya adjusted her scarf. Victor leaned against the register, still basking in the glow of his petty mockery, unaware the tide had shifted. Miguel picked up the watch again, cradled it briefly, then set it down on the glass, gently, not like setting aside an object, but as if laying a fallen soldier to rest. He reached into his old hoodie and pulled out a worn leather wallet. From it, he drew a black ID card, edged in silver, catching the boutique lights like a blade. He said nothing, just placed it flat on the counter. The sound was slow, deliberate, a quiet echo that cut through the room like a bell of reckoning. Victor frowned, picked it up, read it, once, then again. Owner and chairman, Zivano Global. His mouth dropped open, but no words came out. Tanya marched over, high heels striking the floor with courtroom rhythm. She snatched the card from Victor's hands, her eyes scanning rapidly. "This has to be fake," she stammered. This is a joke, right?" Miguel finally spoke. His voice was soft, unshakable. "The first arc light, I carved it by hand, in my father's old garage, with his tools, back when we couldn't afford to heat the house in winter." Tanya blinked, speechless. "I remember every gear, every groove, every imperfection, because I didn't build it to sell. I built it to outlive me. And today you handed me a hollow shell in its place." He turned to Victor, voice low but hardening with every word. "And you looked a woman in the eye and mocked her for crying over a gift to her father. That wasn't Tanya, that was you. You laughed at me for not wearing a suit. You laughed while stealing the name I bled to build." The entire boutique froze. Even the security guard, hand still halfway to his radio, stood motionless. It not like a CEO reclaiming power, but like a father standing to defend the dignity of his child. "This store," he said firmly, "is no longer under your control. You sold counterfeits under my banner. You defrauded customers who trusted the Zivano name. You took what was sacred and traded it for scraps." He pointed at the security guard. "Lock the doors. No one leaves. Call headquarters. Call Ego. Internal investigations are already en route." Tanya stepped back, her voice trembling. "Please, Mr. Santiago, we did." Miguel's stare cut through her like steel. "You didn't think I'd come back. But I always come back. Because when honor is threatened, I never stay silent." And then, silence. Like a curtain falling at the end of a play no one applauded. Within 48 hours, Miguel turned every resource he had into a blade. Internal auditors, compliance officers, third-party forensic experts. They swept into the boutique like a silent army. Baker rolled up his sleeves and sat in the back room, personally combing through inventory sheets, shipping invoices, and transaction logs. His hands shook, not from age, but fury. Next to him, authentic Zivano timepieces. and beside them, cheap, lifeless replica. He picked up one. "This glass, it's molded alloy," he muttered. "We use hand-forged stainless steel. This is trash." The lead auditor looked up, face pale. "We found tampered serial logs at least 8 stores," she said. "Authentic stock's been diverted elsewhere, replicas displayed in flagship locations." "How many units?" Miguel asked, his voice like iron striking granite. 1,200. Estimated market value, $8,400,000, 0 cents. Miguel closed his eyes. Inhaled deeply. Exhaled slowly through his nose, like a man trying not to explode. The next morning, the news broke like thunder across the industry. Federal agents arrived at the flagship boutique with a warrant. Tanya, still dressed in her professional best, stood behind the counter sipping espresso. "This is outrageous," she snapped. Click. Handcuffs locked around her wrists. "You can't just storm in," she tried to protest. The agent didn't flinch. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "you are under arrest for corporate fraud, interstate trafficking of counterfeit goods, and obstruction of a federal investigation." Tanya was speechless. But elsewhere in the boutique, Victor, his face pale, sweat streaking his forehead, was quietly trying to sneak out the back door. What he didn't know was that Miguel was already waiting for him. "Leaving so soon?" Miguel's voice was cold and razor-sharp. "I thought you were the face of Zebrano. Come on, give us a smile." Victor froze in his tracks. "Sir, I didn't know. Tanya ran everything. She told me it was authorized inventory." Miguel stepped forward, eyes locked on him. "No. You looked a woman in the eye and mocked her for buying a gift for her father. That wasn't Tanya. That was you." Cameras captured the moment Victor was cuffed and dragged out as stunned customers and reporters looked on in stunned silence. But Miguel didn't say another word. He wasn't there to put on a show. He was there to make things right, with truth. That night, as the sky over El Paso turned deep indigo, Miguel picked up his phone and dialed a number he didn't have saved. Because he didn't need to. It was etched into his memory. The woman from the boutique. The one they had humiliated, dismissed, hurt, for daring to believe in something good. The line rang once. "Hello?" Her voice was cautious, uncertain. "Mrs. Alvarez," Miguel said softly. "This is Miguel Santiago." A pause. "I didn't think you'd actually—" "I'd like to stop by," he interrupted, his voice warm and steady. "I have something for your father, if he's willing to accept it." They met in a modest brick home on the edge of the city. No marble floors, no chandeliers, just the warm aroma of chamomile tea in a small kitchen, and old family photos hanging on the wall like living memories. Her father stepped forward slowly, hesitantly. On his wrist, the cracked strap of the counterfeit arc-light chrono still hung in place. "I wore it even after it broke," he said with a faint smile. "She saved for months to buy it for me." Miguel stepped closer and handed him a small wooden box, velvet-lined, crafted from polished walnut. Inside, a real arc-light chrono, one of the first 10 ever made, serial number 009. "I built this with my father," Miguel said, his voice calm and deep. 40 hours of handcrafting, sapphire crystal, calfskin strap, and a heartbeat I can still feel every time I look at it. He gently placed the watch in the man's hand and slowly closed his fingers around it. "This belongs to someone who understands what it really means." Tears streamed down Miss Alvarez's cheeks. "Why would you do this for us?" Miguel smiled, tired but proud. "Because people like you are why I built Sabrino. Not for status, not for style, but for those who still believe some things can't be priced. Underscore 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 underscore, and then the note came up. I ignored all furtue. 1 week later, every Zavano employee around the world received an urgent notice, a mandatory live broadcast. No brand logos, no background music, just a black screen. Then Miguel appeared, alone, in the original El Paso workshop. Behind him, tools hanging on pegboards, more hammers, chisels, files. In front of him, the old workbench, scarred by burns and gouges, a relic from where it all began. My name is Miguel Santiago, he said, and today, I want to apologize. Silence. I let this company become a stranger to me. I trusted people who dressed well but thought poorly. I forgot that luxury means nothing without integrity. He held up the fake arc light chrono. The camera zoomed in. This is the face of greed. Then he raised the real one. And this is the shape of love. Miguel placed the fake on the bench. The glass shattered on impact, fragments scattering like broken promises. From this day forward, he continued, every Zavanu boutique will display 2 things behind the counter. My name and my values. His voice dropped lower, but sharpened like a blade. You will treat the janitor with the same respect you give a celebrity. You will never judge a customer by the clothes they wear, the way they speak, or the balance on their card. His eyes locked on the camera. If you ever humiliate a customer again, if you ever think this brand is bigger than the people who believe in it, you will be gone. Overnight. No warnings. He leaned forward, voice slow, steady, undeniable. If that scares you, leave now. The screen faded to black. An interruption. Across the globe, Zawano employees rose to their feet in applause. Some cried. Others bowed their heads in quiet shame. But all of them understood. The old Zavano was gone. Miguel stepped out of the frame. But before he disappeared completely, he glanced down at the watch on his wrist. The very first arc light. Still ticking. Because some legacies aren't built in boardrooms. They're forged in silence, in whispers, in fire, and in the hands of a man who never forgot why he started.